Hello and welcome to this video on beliefs in society, religious organisations. There have been a number of different attempts throughout sociology's history to try and categorise the different types of religious organisation through which people express their religious belief and practice their religious ideals. Troeltsch in particular created a categorisation or typology based on factors like the structure of the organisation, their relationship with the state, their attitude to wider society and the people around them and other religious beliefs, the size of the organisation, the type of people who join the organisation, and the commitment required from members. He, along with the work of Niebhur, led to the four main categories or typology that we will be using today. Starting with the church, churches have generally been around for thousands of years, or at the very least many hundreds of years, and they're very large religious organisations that often have a global reach. They can recruit members from all parts of society, in which case you can refer to them as universal. They often claim what we call a monopoly of religious truth, which is to say they believe that their way to heaven or their path to God is the only way and all other beliefs are wrong. They're very formal, with an organisation of paid officials in a hierarchy type system, and their relationship with the state often means that they carry out certain social functions. A good example could be the Church of England in England and Wales. Meanwhile, denominations are similar to churches in that they're formal and structured in a hierarchy and they have a kind of universal membership. However, whereas churches have been around for maybe thousands of years, denominations have often been around for hundreds of years. Denominations tend to be rather conservative. They tend to look to the past for inspiration in terms of their beliefs. They're not connected to the state, but they will reflect the religious belief of a significant minority. They do not claim the monopoly of religious truth, as often as a result of their history, they're aware of other similar organisations to themselves who have similar paths to God or to heaven. Sects are very different. Sects tend to be very small organisations with tens to hundreds of members, although there are some outliers with perhaps thousands of members. They have no formal hierarchy other than a single charismatic leader who all members are expected to show complete commitment and devotion to. The sect itself will often have norms and values that are vastly different from mainstream society, so they may withdraw from wider society into a commune. Members are often expected to sell all their worldly possessions, to give up alcohol, tobacco, premarital sex, in order to demonstrate their commitment to the group. Generally, they only recruit adults, and again, they will make the claim of the monopoly of religious truth, similar to a church. With cults, we have to be very careful. In mainstream society, the word cult is often used interchangeably with sect, but they are in fact very different, even though the media might perhaps have you to believe otherwise. The similarities in so much as that people join the cult in a very similar way that they join the sect for personal individualistic reasons, and the groups tend to be quite small. But unlike a sect, cults generally don't have a god or gods or power or forces or jinn that people are praising or worshipping. They often, in fact, lack clear rules or particular kind of codexes of beliefs for the supporters, or indeed the believers, or perhaps we should say customers, as often people have to buy the services of an organisation or an individual in order to practice their cultic beliefs. Interestingly, people can often be a member of multiple cults, and again, this could not be the same with a sect. A very different type of typology concerns new religious movements. In the 1970s, there was a rapid growth of smaller religious organisations, which meant that the typology of Troeltsch and Niebhur no longer seemed useful. As a result, Wallace distinguished between these new religious movements, seeing them as being in three different forms: the world-affirming, the world-accommodating, and the world-rejecting. World-affirming new religious movements lack the typical characteristics of a religion, insomuch as often there is no god or gods. They are positive about the world, but argue that individuals are often lacking something spiritually, and this prevents them from achieving fulfillment and success. They offer access to supernatural or spiritual powers that will enhance their ability to live fulfilling and successful lives. Followers are unlikely to live in a commune or give up other aspects of life. In fact, you can live pretty much your normal life whilst incorporating aspects of the world-affirming new religious movements. Examples could include Scientology and transcendental meditation. World-accommodating new religions movements are often offshoots of existing major churches or denominations. Neither accept nor reject the world as it is, they simply live with it. They are concerned with religious questions rather than the questions of this world, and they're seeking to restore spiritual purity to a religion that they believe has lost its commitments to its core values. So often the idea here is that the original church, the original faith or belief was correct, but somehow it's been corrupted. Hence why you might see something like Neo-Pentecostalism or Subud as examples of world-accommodating NRMs. World-rejecting new religious movements are perhaps the most famous of these NRMs. They have the most in common with sects. That is to say, their beliefs are critical of the outside world and they're seeking to bring about change. They believe that to achieve salvation, some big change has to occur in the members' lives in terms of their joining and the level of commitment they're expected to demonstrate. Members are expected to be super disciplined and submit to an ascetic lifestyle. Often it's said that world-rejecting NRMs brainwash their members, and perhaps this is best understood when we look at some of the examples, such as the People's Temple, the Hare Krishnas, Heaven's Gate, the Moonies, the Branch Davidians, and the Manson family. In terms of the strengths and weaknesses of Wallace's typology, the good stuff is that it offers a very useful way for classifying all of these new groups that have come into existence over the last 60 or so years. However, he also recognises that often new religious movements aren't perfect. They don't perfectly fit into the typology. They may have elements of more than one type of new religious movement. The problems with this typology is that it's not clear whether he's categorising them according to the movement's teachings or what the individual members truly believe. Also, it ignores the diversity of beliefs that may exist inside a new religious movement. Not everyone may necessarily be on the same page. And Stark and Bainbridge say that actually we should have a very different typology, or even get rid of typologies altogether, and simply look at whether or not an organisation is in conflict with society or in harmony with society. Stark and Bainbridge focus on cults, and they talk about how cults offer their members this worldly benefits for those who feel that they are in some way deprived. They then go on to provide a typology subdividing cults into three different categories, where we have audience cults, which transmit their ideas through the media to a very large audience. This is particularly popular in the 2020s, where we see platforms like TikTok and Instagram being used to spread audience cults. Client cults, which involve a personal connection between the leader and their followers, who again are seen as clients who are paying for some sort of service so they can unlock and enhance something within their lives. Finally, cultic movements. These may require specific commitment from their clients. Often maybe you have to have a monthly subscription, where again you're slowly unlocking the hidden secrets of the belief system. Niebhur also contributes by talking about the life cycle of a sect. And in particular, he talks about how when sects are born, they come about as a result of what he calls a schism, which is a split. So often you will have a denomination or even a church where a small group within the church may feel that perhaps the church has lost its way, and then they break away from the church or denomination to form their own sect. This sect will be short-lived, however, and within a generation they either die out or they compromise and they themselves become a denomination. And this is because Niebhur says the second generation who were born into the sect won't be as committed as their parents who were there and felt like revolutionaries perhaps at the time in which the sect was born. There's also the Protestant ethic effect, which is that often the people who start the new sect really work super hard and they save all their money and live an ascetic lifestyle, which leads them to accidentally become middle class, and they may well get to a point where they want to enjoy their middle classness and actually start to, again, compromise with the world. Or, of course, the leader of the sect who led the breakaway may in fact die, and you may well find that the members of the sect kind of drift back to the original denomination or church. Stark and Bainbridge build on this yet further, talking about this again, this cyclical nature of a sect, which starts with the schism, the breakaway group, breaking away from the church or denomination because they feel that it's lost its way, and they'll kick off a new world-rejecting sect. At first, everyone's going to be full of initial fervour, with the charismatic leader leading the group and feeling as if they're engaged in a revolutionary act, and everyone will be very committed to the sect. Over time, however, the Protestant ethic effect starts to kick in, and this may mean that actually the second generation aren't again as perhaps fervent as their parents. They may want to enjoy some of the benefits of being perhaps more affluent or more middle class, which may mean that the group slowly become a denomination and then establish themselves, which is to say they became world accepting and their tension with wider society starts to reduce. Finally, another group inside this sect may start to feel that actually perhaps the leaders have lost their way, and a further schism may occur, and then before you know it, the whole process will begin in cycle again. Aldridge suggests that sects must over time either disappear or turn to denomination is in fact a false premise. This is because many sects have existed a long time while they're retaining their features as sects. So perhaps we can think about the Amish, or perhaps we can think about Jehovah's Witnesses here. Not all sects depend on charismatic leaders. Many will have a bureaucracy, or many will have a kind of council leadership. Many sects have been successful in socializing children, that is the second generation, into acceptance of the sect's beliefs and practices. Sects can maintain strict standards of conduct, including expelling those or excommunicating those who fail to conform. And again, good examples could in fact be the Amish in the United States, or Jehovah's Witnesses, which can be found worldwide. Wilson similarly rejected the view that the disappearance of a sect or its becoming a denomination was the only kind of route forward once a sect has been born. Instead, Wilson talked about the 5 different categories, or again a typology, which a sect could be found in, and this gives us some kind of clue to the life of a sect according to Wilson. You have introversionist sects who believe that the only route to salvation involves total withdrawal from wider society, which they believe to be corrupt. Again, perhaps a good example of this could be the Amish, who withdraw from wider society and reject the use of electricity. Then you have a conversionist sects who are likely to develop into a denomination, but not always, and can retain some of their sect-like qualities, and their aim is to go out and try and convert as many members as possible to keep the sect, or indeed the denomination, alive. And again, perhaps this is where Jehovah's Witnesses come in, because a lot of their work involves seeking to convert people. You also get reformist sects. These groups attempt to improve society through their teachings and individual examples. So they may feel that by being a paragon of virtue, that actually they can try and reform society around them, and again, I suppose, attract members. You have manipulationist sects who promote discipline and asceticism. Again, there may be elements there of kind of what Calvinism was all about, according to Weber. Finally, we have millenarian sects, which believe that divine intervention is on its way, that God's coming back, and the judgment day will occur, and they will use perhaps the kind of fear of that as a kind of inspiration for attracting new members. Next, we need to understand the explanations for the growth of these new religious movements, the first of which could be marginality. Max Weber argued that marginalized groups feel that they are disprivileged, and a sect, for example, can offer a solution to this by giving a theodicy of disprivilege, which is a religious explanation or justification for suffering and disadvantage. At its very simplest, this is the idea that perhaps one might be suffering because it's part of God's divine plan, and that you'll be rewarded in the afterlife. Wallace argues that even well-educated young middle-class people might join cults because they have become marginal to society. So, for example, in the 60s and 70s, many people attracted to these organisations were themselves hippies or dropouts or drug users from more kind of affluent backgrounds. Another explanation could be relative deprivation. This is the subjective sense of being deprived. That is to say that deprivation is itself relative. Sometimes you may feel deprived compared to others, and no more so than in a postmodern world where, in a hyper-individualistic society, we are encouraged to compare ourselves with others. Even middle-class people may feel that they are spiritually deprived because society's materialistic consumerist culture can be perceived as impersonal or lacking moral value, emotional warmth, or authenticity. So people may be looking for a spiritual connection when they feel that the world around them has become very atomized or plastic. It is perhaps particularly easy to understand how those who are absolutely deprived may themselves, of course, feel deprived. Nonetheless, that deprivation will to them feel relative. Next, we need to consider social change. Wilson, in particular, argued that sects emerge in periods of rapid social change because it disrupts and undermines established norms and values and produces anomie or normlessness. The response to that uncertainty and insecurity may therefore to be attracted to a sect which offers a solution that offers certainty and offers security, often in the form of specific rules and a deep level of commitment that is required to be a member, and therefore ultimately will be rewarded again in the afterlife. In particular, one example could be how Methodism grew and rose during the Industrial Revolution, a period of great social change. Bruce argued that people are less attracted to traditional churches and strict sects today because they demand too much commitment. Instead, people may be attracted to cults because they're less demanding and require fewer sacrifices, but nonetheless they may help people with the great upheavals and social changes of the postmodern era. Another explanation could be the growth of the religious marketplace. Hervieu-Leger describes this process as detraditionalization, claiming that parents today are now less likely to pass on their traditional customs to their children, and this is leading to cultural amnesia. Gone are the days where parents would have insisted that their children go to Sunday school to learn the articles of faith, and so the habit of religion has been lost, and so too has the practice and indeed the attendance. As a consequence, children are less likely to be attracted to stale traditional churches. Instead, they will shop around on the spiritual marketplace, creating a pick and mix basket of their own beliefs from all over the world in a DIY type religion. This may mean that new religious movements that use the media, in particular social media, and other contemporary means to engage with people are seen as more attractive than those stale traditional churches. Finally, we can consider internal secularization. Herberg suggests that new religious movements are benefiting from the internal secularization that is occurring within traditional churches. In order to remain relevant, traditional churches are diluting their beliefs on conservative principles. So good examples could include how, in recent times, the Roman Catholic Church has paid less attention to the concept of exorcism and no longer perhaps performs that type of traditional rite that once upon a time may have been considered a normal part of church practice. Also, the concept of miracles has been less talked about and is seen as more of a historic anomaly than something that's part of contemporary articles of belief. This has led to some traditional followers feeling left behind by their religion, and therefore they turn to more fundamentalist movements or sects, wanting to go back to the sacred text or a more fundamental version of the faith. We must also consider the growth of New Age movements. This is a term that has been prominent since the 1980s and was replaced a lot of the use of the phrase cult and the use of new religious movements. In a general sense, the New Age refers to sets of beliefs and activities that contain a spiritual element but are not organised in the same way as traditional religion. Often New Age beliefs exist independent of any organisation or individual and spread through aspects of culture such as films, music, books, shops and seminars, and of course in the 2020s we would be thinking about social media and the internet more generally. Heelas and others describe the environment in which the New Age exists as the holistic milieu, and unlike the congregational domain of traditional churches which gather together for collective worship, the holistic milieu involves a more one-to-one set of activities, for example between a healer and a client, and small group activities between individuals who come together for a yoga class. Heelas identifies two common themes in New Age movements, namely self-spirituality, turning away from external religions to look inwardly, believing that the spiritual answers that one is looking for can be found within the self. But also de-traditionalization, where traditional sources of authority, whether that's a holy text or a priest or an archbishop, are rejected in search of individual truths, which again, back to self-spirituality, can be found from within. There is a debate between sociologists over the reason for the growth of the New Age. Some argue it's the result of changes that have occurred in a postmodern world, whereas others simply argue it's the next phase of modernity having an impact on religion and religiosity. Heelas argues New Age movements link to postmodernity because they provide a source of identity. When postmodern society demands humans have many selves, whether who you are at work or who you are at family or who you are with your friends or with a significant other, often you can feel like you are a collection of selves, and what the New Age offers is an opportunity to bring those together, to harmonize those together, and to ultimately be your authentic self. Consumer culture is a key part of postmodernity, but it causes disappointment, as often what we buy never really satisfies and never really meets the kind of expectation. New Age beliefs offer alternative paths to meeting that expectation or achieving a form of perfection. Also, of course, rapid social change in postmodernity has disrupted norms and values, resulting in anomie, and the New Age could offer a sense of certainty because, of course, you are yourself, and if you are looking internally into yourself and you are always going to be yourself, you can be your own rock. New Age beliefs can fill the vacuum left behind by traditional religions, and perhaps, therefore, the rise of the New Age is as a result of the decline of traditional organised religion. Bruce instead argues that New Age movements are simply the next stage of modernity, influencing religious organisations and religious groups, rather than being a form of postmodernity. Bruce argues that modern society values individualism, and that's a key principle of the New Age, which is why it's doing so well. The New Age is popular amongst expressive professions and the middle class, which of course have ballooned in modern society, and women who have become emancipated or freed. New Age religion is a watered-down version of Eastern religions, Bruce claims, like Buddhism, which has been made more palatable for Westerners, and is part of the pick-and-mix spiritual shopping ethos, which can be found right at the heart, of course, of contemporary modern capitalism. In order to evaluate the work of Heelas and the work of Bruce, we can look to the work of Sutcliffe, who argues that actually there is no New Age movement, that the New Age refers to a diverse range of ideas and lacks key features of a religious organisation like physical premises, leaders, shared beliefs and rituals, to such an extent that it can't really be regarded as a movement at all. Rather, it's more a means for individuals to pursue their own self-development and explore their inner spirituality. Therefore, the nearest it comes to an organisational form is perhaps a loose network of like-minded individuals who might keep in touch through the internet and social media networking sites, such as perhaps Reddit or Instagram or Discord. That's it. Thank you very much.